One of the very best of Kerbal Space Program graphics mods is Linx's Parallax. It overhauls the planetary terrain shaders from the ground up and adds loads of surface objects like forests, grass, rocks, and a whole bunch of other stuff like ice spikes on Val and icebergs on Lathe, all with full collision of course. The mod has had a few versions now. There was the original Parallax, then there was Parallax 2, and now there is Parallax Continued. The final one has actually been covered on this channel before. I'll stick a card on screen and a description link to that if you want to go check it out. But that was an earlier version of the mod when it was in paid early access, which got a few people a bit upset as there was a fear that the mod would just sit in perpetual early access and never become free. But I'm here to tell you today that those fears were unfounded, as the mod is done, early access is over, and now it's free to all who want to get their grubby hands on it. I'll link the forum page down in the description, but to future-proof this video, I'll just say now that if the link doesn't work, then just Google Parallax Continued KSP or something. I say this because with the Kerbal IP being passed around between various different investment firms like a hot potato, who knows if the forums will remain online in the long term. Depressing as that is to say. But that's enough negativity. What's the long and short of the release version of Parallax Continued? Well, it's just more of what you loved about Parallax 2, but it's had a lot more focus on performance upgrades. It's a complete rewrite of the original mod as far as I understand it, with a full suite of performance enhancements with multi-threading and significant code architectural improvements that allow the mods to run blazingly fast. I just quoted Linx's forum description there because I don't want to try and rephrase in my own words and get it wrong. But yes, as mentioned, it brings many things, including high quality, physically based terrain materials, complete with tessellation, meaning the ground isn't just flat and painted, it's textured, detailed, and it reacts to light in a super realistic way. The planets feel much more alive now thanks to the addition of trees, grass, rocks, and a wide range of other object types that can appear as ground clutter on every single planet and moon. No more barren landscapes, which is always a real bugbear of mine for both KSP and KSP2. On top of all that, it also adds fast and accurate collisions with surface objects, whether you're waddling along or attempting to drive a rover or trying to land an aircraft or something. Everything interacts as it should, though the amount of collision there is, for want of a better description, can be toggled in case you want to tone down the difficulty of navigating more rocky locations. Things look better from orbit as well. The mod overhauls planet textures seen from space, now with realistic ray-marched shadows, which is a fancy way of saying that you get beautifully rendered, accurate shading that gives planets the appearance of real depth and atmosphere. And last but definitely not least, when you get down to the surface, you'll be stepping onto completely new planetary surface textures. And let me say from experience that it is very hard to go back to stock KSP after seeing these, which is going to be the focus of this video. I'm going to visit one particularly pretty location on Linx's recommendation, on board the machine that's been quietly coming together in the background while I've been waffling on about Parallax Continued. Well, I suppose actually I crossfaded and started building another machine. This is going to be the lander that takes us from the orbit of the place we're going, keeping things deliberately vague there, down to the surface. We can deploy a little rover and have a fun old time exploring the new ground look, and then it's going to take us back up to the mothership, which is what you saw me constructing for the majority of the video so far. Now, I've deliberately not been showing any clips of Parallax for this kind of video when I was describing the mod, because I kind of want to showcase it as we go along. I kind of say that as if it's meant to be a surprise, even though you guys probably statistically have seen a video of mine recently before, and I've had Parallax Continued installed for a while, but not this latest version. I updated it just for this video, because I kept forgetting for the other videos, but I felt like I probably should update it for the purposes of showcasing the update, you know? Anyway, when I built the mothership, I left that like truss section there to place the lander, but it turned out the lander I built was a bit too wide for the fairing truss structure. Now there's no collision on the fairing truss structure. When I say truss structure, I mean those two kind of side girder pieces that have now disappeared, so this is a helpful time to describe it. There's no collision there, but it looks a bit naff to just have like the lander morph through the truss, and it also looks a bit naff to have no truss at all and just have this like phantom joinery between the front of the ship and the rear of the ship. So I kind of built my own truss structure out of these girder pieces, which is very inefficient. They weigh a lot and it does impact our delta V significantly, but not significantly enough for it to affect the mission, because I don't know if you guys have noticed this, we have a heck of a lot of Delta V on board the mothership. We've got all of that liquid fuel with the hyper-efficient nuclear engines, because we're going to be going a long way from Kerbin. Maybe that's a little bit of a clue as to where we might be going. Also, the ship, the eagle-eyed among you may have noticed, is called the Icy Explorer. So the first time I showcased Parallax Continued, I asked Linx, its creator, which places are the prettiest, and I went to Val and Minmus based on his recommendation. This time I asked him again, and he recommended visiting the overhauled Eeloo. So I am time warping to a transfer window. Eeloo wants to be about 101 degrees ahead of Kerbin, and yeah, we can go check out its new design. And I do love a good design, me. Especially Novium's, today's sponsor, hover pens. Check out the hover pen Interstellar. It's an award-winning pen that floats, spins, oh, so satisfying, and is a great conversation starter. I really love stuff like this, and my hover pen gets near daily use. It stands at an angle, mimicking the Earth's axial tilt held up by magnets, not only looking amazing, but for me, it's had a nice side effect in that I never struggle to find a pen in a pinch now. I also love my silver hover pen Future, which I've set up with a fountain pen tip, but this can be swapped out for a rollable if you prefer. And if you want an extra special pen, then the hover pen Interstellar has a version with a real meteorite embedded in the tip, older than the Earth itself, making this an unforgettable gift for yourself, or any fan of space, tech, or anyone who could appreciate the coolest desk accessory ever. And you can get 10% off all hover pens using my exclusive code MATTLOWNE with free international shipping to most countries. Hit the link in the description, or simply scan the applicable QR code to grab yours now. And we are off to a blazing start. Not the quickest rocket off the pad, in spite of the fact that we have no shortage of power here. I mean, how many engines do we have? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is good. This is a good bit of commentary, isn't it? Just now counted the engines on the rocket. We've got 9 Mastodon engines powering this thing. The Mastodon is the Kerbal Space Program equivalent of the F1, the legendary engine that, of course, powered the Saturn V. So, you know, very powerful. So we've obviously got a pretty hefty rocket here. I say that as if you didn't just watch me build the whole thing. Obviously speeding the footage up now to get to the good part, right? Going to space. Although that being said, I think this was supposed to be a video about showcasing a mod that puts things on the ground, right? Maybe I should have put more focus into showcasing the ground on Kerbin. Oh well, you live and learn, don't you? I do plan on making a functioning submarine after I, got the nod of approval from the community when I mentioned the possibility of doing that on my Eve submarine redux video I did. I think it was last week I published that. I already forgotten my upload schedule. And the beautiful thing about Parallax Continued is that it doesn't just add surface stuff, it also adds stuff underwater as well. I know for a fact it adds stuff under the water on Kerbin. I'm pretty sure it does for Lathe and Eve as well. So very excited to check that out. One of my favorite games of all time is Subnautica. I even really love Subnautica Sub-Zero, even though a lot of people didn't like that game as much. I liked it almost as much as Subnautica 1, personally. Although they're making another Subnautica game now, and that's just called Subnautica 2. So I guess even the developers consider Below Zero, the red-headed stepchild of the trilogy, but whatever, I really liked it. I don't know why I'm spending so much time talking about a different game that's not Kerbal Space Program in this Kerbal Space Program video, as we are about to finish our burn to space. There we are, we've got a nice apoapsis height of 94,000 meters, so that's a pretty safe height. I kind of want a pretty high orbit because we're going to be doing a very long burn to get to Eeloo, which means as we start the burn, it is going to force our periapsis down somewhat, and there's a potential risk of it dropping into the atmosphere and ruining everything if our initial orbit isn't high enough. So for kind of the Joule system and beyond, I usually like to have an orbital height of no lower than 90,000 meters. So that was kind of why we've got a slightly higher apoapsis than I might otherwise do for something like, I don't know, a Juno mission or a Mun or Minmus mission, obviously. So yeah, now we have plenty of fuel left in the second stage of the rocket here, and that's because we're going to do the beginning of our interstellar burn. Interstellar? bit ambitious, isn't it? Interplanetary burn. Using it, we're then going to time warp up to Apoapsis and then stage it, and then it's got a little probe core and some residual fuel on board so it can deorbit itself. I did add parachutes as well, but honestly I just wanted to keep the video flowing, so I didn't bother attempting to recover it. I just deorbited it, and to be honest, I was a bit skeptical of it surviving the the heating of re-entry from an orbital height of this height. So yeah, that's us disposing of the second stage there. Now we can we can plot our major burn that's going to get us from low Kerbin orbit all the way to low Eeloo orbit. Now, I feel like I repeat myself a lot on this channel, right? Because I've been making videos about this game now for over 10 years as of last week. So I guess it's natural that some things are going to get repeated. But I say a lot that the Maneuver Node Planner of Kerbal Space Program 1, well, both games really, but KSP 2 did attempt to be a bit more accurate. The Maneuver Node Planner in KSP 1 is great for kind of small burns, but for really big burns, here 1.5 kilometer per second of change in velocity there, so huge burn, especially coupled with engines with very poor thrust to weight ratio. Case in point, the nuclear engines, one of the weediest engines in the game. Trade-off being they're very efficient. The orbit that you end up with after doing a maneuver node burn usually isn't the same as what the maneuver node predicted, which for a lot of cases is fine, but when we're trying to reach a teeny tiny sphere of influence like Eeloo's from a very long way away, we're unlikely to get an encounter. So I wasn't really trying to get an encounter from the get-go from low Kerbin orbit. I was just trying to get kind of an orbit that was nice and high that we could then do a mid-course correction burn to then refine and get our Eeloo encounter. Also, Eeloo is at an inclined orbit, so it is very difficult to get an encounter from low Kerbin orbit. In fact, it wouldn't make sense. It would be very inefficient to do the inclination change from this location. But sometimes what you can do is you can create a maneuver node that kind of gets you on an orbit that I've just done, and then create a maneuver node, another maneuver node on that maneuver node burn, and then do another, simulate a mid-course correction to get the encounter. But as I've been attempting to say in what's now turned out to be a really rambling, waffling description, the orbit you get from doing a maneuver node burn isn't usually the same as what the maneuver node predicted. So I find there's very little use in doing that, aside from potentially, I don't know, when you try to plot lots and lots of gravity assists in one flight, then it's really useful. But otherwise, I just do the burn. I would think that looks about right, and then I do a mid-course correction burn, which is what I'm doing right now. Yes! I timed this really well. We've got a great view of the ship just there. Okay, now we don't. It's the map screen. But yes, speaking of the ship, because I haven't really talked about it all that much, because I was kind of just introducing Parallax and then just bit of chaos for the last 6 minutes, I guess. But I decided to use a stock vessel because I kind of wanted to showcase how good stock KSP looks these days. Well, I say stock, I mean stock with graphics mods, right? So we've got, the full mod description is in the description. I won't read through it all because who's got time for that? But the long and short of it is the parts on the ship are all stock, albeit replaced with Restock. So Restock is a mod that just updates the visuals of the stock KSP components, make them look a bit better. So it's not, I guess, a 100% stock vessel in that sense, but it's pretty darn close. And yeah, we've got a little rotating gravity ring. Obviously, we're now 6 years, 99 days already into this mission. I thought it was only 13 minutes, 31 seconds, but there we are. Time flies, I guess. And so I didn't want the Kerbals to suffer from atrophy or anything like that, so I built that little rotating ring. I guess when we time warp, it stops spinning, because that's what happens when you time warp in KSP, so yeah, I guess it wouldn't have worked. So apologies, Jebediah, Bill, and Bob. That's it. I have nothing more to add to that. Just apologies to Jebediah, Bill, and Bob. But we could just use the power of imagination, right? And now we're going to perform our circularization around Eeloo. Now look at the size of that burn. So big, considering how tiny Eeloo's gravity well is. And that's because Eeloo is just in such a high orbit relative to Kerbin's. I find this hard to describe in voiceover only, but basically the reason why a capture burn around Eeloo from Kerbin is because when you're orbiting, or when you're decelerating to enter the orbit of a celestial body, what you're essentially doing is first and foremost just matching speeds with that object around whatever it's orbiting. So in this case, we're kind of matching our spacecraft's orbit around the sun with Eeloo's orbit around the sun. When you think of it that way, you can kind of understand, like, forget about Encounter Eeloo. If you just had to go and get a spacecraft from Kerbin up to a orbital altitude, a circular orbital altitude that's beyond Joule, you're gonna, obviously, hopefully, that's gonna take a lot of fuel, and there's a similar sort of thing going around Eeloo. Not quite as much, because we can make use of the O-berth effect by burning close to Eeloo periapsis, but Eeloo's gravity well is so low that the O-berth effect we get isn't that great. And yeah, that's my story about orbits. Hey guys, it's Future Matt here, commentating after this video was completed, to say that I really screwed up here, guys. So, what Eeloo at the moment on your screens looks largely similar to stock Eeloo, but I was like, oh, it's fine because this is just the mod changes the surface, right? But if Parallax actually changes the appearance of Eeloo from space as well. Like, here's some footage I recorded later when I realized my huge error. So, Parallax, as you can see, Eeloo looks really, really good in this shot here. Let's go to a shot where I was orbiting it with the spacecraft. So basically what happens when you install Parallax is you download a few files. There's the Parallax mod itself, then the stock scatter textures, the stock terrain textures, and the stock planet textures. And I somehow hadn't installed the planet textures properly. Like, look how much better Eeloo looks now. I know, it's like, I'm supposed to be uploading it today, so I can't reshoot the video now. I'm so annoyed with myself because this looks epic. Like, if we now go to like load when I was on EVA down on Eeloo, it's a difficult thing, and I have to admit I feel really guilty especially for Linx, who made this mod and I'm supposed to be showcasing it. Oh my goodness, there's big craters and it's so much better. So I'm probably going to have to do a make good video, a version of this video at some point, maybe like next Saturday. I'll do another Eeloo mission. I'll maybe do an Eeloo base to showcase the surface better. So yeah, just a heads up, although the ground scatter here, like from a close up, the ground looks basically the same as what it's going to look like for the rest of this video. The planet itself is way better if you install it properly. So just a heads up there. Sorry, apologies, especially to you, Linx, who recommended me go to Eeloo to showcase how it was revamped, and I've sort of let you down a bit there. So, yes, apologies, everyone, and with that in mind, we will now resume the video. So, now we are in low Eeloo orbit, we can start thinking about beginning our surface expedition. So I'm just pumping fuel into the lander because I forgot to disable the fuel crossfeed of the docking port on the lander, so the nuclear engines were pulling liquid fuel not just from the mothership's fuel supply but also from the lander's fuel supply, which obviously wouldn't be great. Imagine, right, if I had undocked and realized that after the fact and then it was too late. Because that's what happened. I did a stealth quick load. I was like, oh my gosh, where's all my liquid fuel? So I quick loaded to an earlier point and I realized what happened, and I did what I just did. Now, one thing that's quite interesting about this lander, I don't think I've ever done this before, is I've made my own custom landing gear. Because you know what, guys? I'm over it. I'm over stock landing gear. Stock landing gear. Friendship ended. Not a fan of it anymore. Maybe that's not completely, strictly 100% true, but I just get fed up of like landing somewhere, and then if you're not on a completely flat surface, which, let's be real, is almost all the time, the lander will just slide around like it's on ice, which I guess would be fitting here because we're on Eeloo, but you know what I mean? It feels a bit unrealistic. I'd like to just come to a complete stop. And I found that grip pads, which are what make the feet of my custom landing legs here, in my limited wow, this is really hard to say. In my limited experience experimenting with them, you don't slide around when you're balanced on grip pads, which I guess makes sense because they grip, right? So yeah, I built these landing legs out of grip pads and some alligator hinges and some girders. So these have the downside of being much heavier than the stock landing legs, and I don't know if they would work somewhere like Eve with really high surface gravity where the hinges can't take the weight of a really heavy Eve ascent spacecraft, but for little places like Eeloo, which don't require a great amount of fuel to take off from, it's perfect. I'm going to start doing this more often. I'm going to try and experiment with more joints and stuff. I'm really excited for the future of landing gear on Kerbal videos on this channel. It's very... Now I say it out loud, it doesn't sound quite as exciting, but whatever. Look how exciting this is! I'm on a rover! And I should mention now at this point, look at the ground! Look at the collision with the rocks as well! My goodness, this looks absolutely stunning. Like, look at the reflections of Eeloo. Just go to a little pause there. And yeah, you can see that tessellation there. They got real lumps and bumps on the surface. It's not just a flat surface. Looks absolutely stunning. So, now that Jebediah has sort of recovered the rover that started rolling away on its own accord, Bob is going to try and disembark the vessel, morph into that radioactive power generation supply. So hopefully Bob's going to be okay. And get back on his seat. What's he doing here? I think this is me. It turns I actually did record this footage, guys. I just recorded it yesterday, and so now I've forgotten everything that happened. I also forgot that Bob fell over like this. But whatever, all water under the bridge now. Our Kerbals are on board. Now, what I do remember from recording this footage is that, like many rovers in stock Kerbal Space Program, this rover was a bit of a nightmare to control. Probably partly because I am not the safest driver, and also because of the collision with those rocks. I really was going way too fast, considering that the surface features here have collision. Now, with this mod, you can toggle, how much collision there is. So you could set it so those tiny little surface rocks that have collision for me don't have collision for you, but then the larger rocks still do. So you can kind of tweak it like that. I decided to put max collision on because... it's funny actually. I don't think I've got max collision. Like, you can have an absurd level of collision where, like, for example, Kerbin, they have these, you can get like daisies growing on the surface, and the daisies and the petals of the daisies have collision, which obviously in real life, yes, daisies have collision, but like you can just stomp on them, right? You wouldn't trip over one. Like, you can have a Kerbal climb a daisy and stand on top of it. That's how insane you can make the collisions. That's the end of that sentence, I guess. As you can see, this rover was a bit nose heavy because it's got the two Kerbals sitting right on the nose, and it kept on tipping over. So it was a bit of a tricky thing to drive, as are most rovers. Although right there was a bit egregious, wasn't it? I call it like ping physics, where like a lot of things in KSP, if a wheel touches something just wrong, it goes ping and flings you off some direction. I'm not blaming the mod for this. I'm blaming just the janky physics engine of Kerbal Space Program. But yeah, I guess that is a compelling reason to maybe turn down the collision of the mod for certain things, because ultimately, while the mod does, phenomenally overhaul Kerbal Space Program, it is ultimately having to work with the physics of Kerbal Space Program. Sometimes physics, she can be a cruel mistress. But after much, try and tribulation, I finally managed to get the rover to get close enough to this little boulder to do a little scan. And the scanning arm is, the boulder, I should say, is part of the Breaking Ground DLC. This isn't part of the, I forgot the name of it for a second, the Parallax Continued mod. So it adds lots of scatter while retaining the scatter from Breaking Ground. We've scanned that rock successfully. Now it's time to make a successful voyage back to the lander. But there's a little shot of the things of the Parallax mod. And yeah, look at those big icebergs kind of to the left there. Yeah, speaking of the icebergs, we do have to now navigate the ice field back. And to be honest, guys, it took ages, and I ended up with the rover upside down, and I couldn't write it, and I'm just leaving it there. So here we are back at the lander, planting our flag. Jebediah Kerman there, looking very happy. We can plant our put a little plaque there. I've been tripping over my words quite a bit in this commentary. I apologize for that. We're getting a bit nostalgic now, I guess. Do you guys remember last year during the summer I'd always complain that my room was getting quite hot, and so it was hard for me to concentrate and talk coherently for a long time? Well, this is kind of on the longer end of my videos, right? Just over half an hour. A lot of my videos kind of the 20-minute mark, so it's a longer commentary, and we're having a bit of a heat wave here in the UK at the moment, and my recording studio, aka my office that I put loads of foam over the walls, it's a really small room with two massive 4K monitors blasting heat in my face, not to mention my big beefy PC case, and I gotta keep the window closed with the curtain drawn, so to keep the echo down and all that. And a very loud ice cream van went past earlier, and so I didn't want the music of that going on this video. So long and short of it is, the room is getting quite wham, I'm looking at the thermometer now. It's 26 degrees Celsius. It's not that hot. If it was outside, that would be a lovely, pleasant day. But when you're sitting in a room with stale air and just a computer fan, pushing warm air at your face, it ain't the most pleasant. So apologize if I sound like I'm just circling the drain. I feel like I had a bit of a breakdown just there. Anyway, we have completed our surface antics for now, and we're heading back to the mothership. I say for now because we actually have a liquid fuel and oxidizer tank on the mothership, which means we can fully refuel the lander and do another excursion down to the surface, check out another area and see how Parallax has affected that. Now, it was my epic plan to bring the rover back with us, but like I say, the rover flipped upside down and I couldn't get it to flip back up. Annoyingly, I normally build in a fail-safe for this, so I usually put some sort of self-righting mechanism into my rovers. I want to say a self-righting mechanism, I mean I just put a reaction wheel on board them, and I could just use the torque of that reaction wheel to have the rover flip itself back up, but I guess I just forgot in this instance, and well, the rover is not that exciting, is it? It's just, so I don't think the video has kind of been devalued because of that. So here we are performing a Lowne lazy docking of the two vessels. The gravity ring, the stock gravity ring there has gone a bit wrong, hasn't it? I think the whenever you leave physics range of the vessel, the pistons go all floppy. So just by changing the damping level to either 0 or 100, just seems to fix that. So that's what that is. And yeah, annoyingly, I don't know if I'm just stupid. I don't know how to do this, but to get the gravity ring to spin, after just spawning the vessel in for the first time, or leaving its physics range and then returning to its physics range, or loading a quick save, the rotor always stops because the torque limit resets to 0. And I don't know how to make the torque limit become not 0 without literally right-clicking the motor and tweaking the sliding gauge. There's no, when you try and set it to an action group, there's no option on the action group menu to change the torque setting. Can it be done with the cal controller? This is a genuine cry for help, guys. If you know how to do this, let me know in the comments below. Maybe, I'm just thinking out loud now, and I feel like maybe the cal controller is the way to go, or maybe I could bind I, J, K, and L to the torque settings of that motor, maybe, or something else. I don't know. I've got to do a bit of soul searching, it seems, to figure this out. So, have we now pumped fuel back into the lander? I sort of pumped it off, then I remembered, oh, actually, my plan was to do another surface mission. So now, yep, there we are. Jeb and Bob are back on board, ready to go down to the surface once again. I did consider bringing Bill down to the surface because, he missed out last time, but, Bob's the scientist. We need Bob to do the science, even though I do have the tech tree fully unlocked, so I don't really need it at this point. So when it came to choosing a second landing site, Eeloo, look at it. There's not much variance in its different biomes, but there are the white parts and there are kind of these brown parts. So let's go to a brown part. Now we've been to the white part. I guess I remember when Eeloo was first added to KSP. Yeah, that's how old I am, guys. I literally only just got the game when it was added, I think. I remember watching the Scott Manley video of him exploring Eeloo for the first time, and he described it as a dirty snowball. And that description's always stuck with me because it perfectly describes Eeloo's appearance. But look at this. In the brown parts here, there is now ice chunks. And I was coming in very fast, and I realized I was going to sort of land on a big rock, which I didn't really want to do. So the last minute, we did a bit of an abort, a little bit of a hop over to somewhere that's a bit more not on ice boulders, basically. Here we are, perfect. And here we are coming to a touchdown on our 4 grip pad landing legs. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. So now it's time to go on EVA, plant our flag, run our Science Junior experiment once again to get the science point that I said earlier we don't need. That's why I haven't been too vigilant about running all the science experiments whenever we've changed biomes. So if I were trying to unlock parts of the tech tree, I would have, for example, done the science experiments from low Kerbal orbit, high Kerbal orbit, interplanetary space, high Eeloo orbit, low Eeloo orbit, and then, on the surface, etc. But this is all just kind of for show and all that. And I probably would have brought some deployable science with me as well, because the science multiplier on Eeloo is really, really high for its difficulty level. I guess Eeloo's kind of challenging to get to if you've never done it before, but it's overall a fairly easy place to land on and come back from, certainly compared to somewhere like Tylo or Eve. But I do believe that, well, I'm pretty sure I know for a fact that Eeloo's science multiplier means that if, for example, you ran the Science Junior experiment from its surface, if you returned that sample back to the Kerbal Space Center, you'd net more science from Eeloo's surface than you would from Eve's surface, which obviously is completely illogical, right? Because returning from Eve's surface is something even I find challenging still. It's the most difficult kind of stock mission you can do in Kerbal Space Program. Isn't something arbitrary like a grand tour. Same for Tylo, really. I mean, Tylo is easier to take off from than Eve, but it's almost as hard as it's not as hard as landing on Tylo as it's taking off from Eve, but it's very, very hard. It's one of the hardest places to land on because Tylo, in case you don't know, is the in-game analog of Ganymede. It's just a really, really big moon. In fact, it's almost exactly the same size as Kerbin, but it has no atmosphere. So obviously landing on Kerbin is very easy. Just use a parachute and a heat shield. Imagine having to land on Kerbin without having the atmosphere to slow you down. You've got to use engines the whole way down, and then use engines the whole way up. So Tylo landers, they end up being quite big things. So yeah, Tylo. But again, I'm not quite sure, to be fair, with Tylo, but I do believe Tylo, again, has a lower science modifier than Eeloo. I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty sure the ranking of the 3 examples I've given, so Eeloo would net the most science, Tylo would rank the next, and then Eve would rank the least, basically. But I haven't checked any of this, so do correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. And I guess, although Tylo would technically net you less science, obviously Tylo is a moon, not a planet like Eeloo. It's a moon of Joule, so you'll be entering Joule's sphere of influence, and there'll be plenty of opportunities to do flybys of other Joule moons on your Tylo mission to grab more science, so that probably balances it out for Tylo, even though I do think that the science multiplier for Tylo should be higher. The reason for this is because KSP decides the science multiplier. I think it's just based on distance from Kerbin, so the closer you are to Kerbin, the fewer science you net. I guess just from like anecdotally seeing how much science I'm getting from various places, that's just my understanding of things. But again, very happy to be corrected in the comments below this video. I guess I could just I feel like as a content creator, I have a duty of care to fact check these things. But we're 29 minutes 30 seconds into the video. I feel like most people here are familiar with Kerbal Space Program. I've probably seen my videos before and know that it's all about the tangents, meandering down lanes of confusion whilst I just think of things out loud without Googling and checking things for myself. Especially when I'm in the heat like this, and really I just kind of want to do the commentary without pausing and checking things, because I'm slowly withering away here. I know I'm on 2-pint weather, right? So I have a pint glass on my desk with cold water on it. Usually just run the 1 glass, but around sort of this time onwards, I kind of finish the glass before I finish the commentary. So now I'm on 2-pint glasses of water. So yeah, it's just 2-pint season. Can we make that a thing? Hashtag 2-pint season. Nah, that's lame actually. But anyway, let's go back to Kerbin. So, we could do a kind of a really hyper-efficient way of getting back, but we've got so much fuel left. We've got 2,754 meters per second of delta V remaining. Huge, huge, huge amount. And we have an ablative heat shield on our command pod / re-entry module, and the heat shields in this game are extremely overpowered. So we can just force a Kerbin encounter by doing a really long, inefficient burn and coming into Kerbin at a really, well, basically our orbital velocity will be extremely high, but it's all fine because we have a heat shield to absorb the very, very, very high re-entry speed and, the heating that comes with that. And we have all of the delta V required to brute force said, long and inefficient burn. So, yeah, it makes a nice change of pace from my SSTO missions, where I actually have to plan ahead and think, okay, we do need to be entering Kerbin's sphere of influence at a reasonably low speed. So usually that would involve, leaving Eeloo and then doing like a dual gravity assist, and then doing 2 Kerbin gravity assists and the Eve gravity assist. And I did this in KSP too as well. So when the science mode was added, Nate Simpson said, I bet Matt Lowne could get to Eeloo using the first page of the tech tree. And I said, yeah, I'm gonna try and one up that challenge there and do it on the first ever mission using only the starting tech. And I did that, but the first ever mission, well, the first starting tech I should say, does not include a heat shield. And so I had to be very careful about re-entering nice and slow because I would explode very easily. So I kind of used the fuel tanks of the engines of the rocket as the ablator, and then hoped that the command pod could just survive the rest of the re-entry on its own once all of that stuff had exploded. And it just did, just barely. I actually still really like that video. I know it's lost a lot of its relevance now because it's Kerbal Space Program 2, which, let's be honest, is very, 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 very unlikely to ever be a relevant thing again. But, you know, maybe I'll put a link in the description to it in case you want to check it out, because although it's KSP2, it's the same solar system as KSP1, and all the Delta V is the same, and the engines I was using and all the components have equivalent parts in KSP1, so I think it still holds a bit of relevance to players of Kerbal Space Program 1, even though it is presented in the format of being in Kerbal Space Program 2. Yeah, that's that. So here we are, approaching Kerbin. And you might be getting a bit worried that I'm not staged just yet, and don't worry, I haven't staged yet because I wanted the re-entry to be as dangerous as possible. And so, give Bob, Bill and Jebediah a nice fireworks show to watch as we re-enter. And look at our speed, over 8,000 meters per second, so those modules are going to explode very quickly. And yeah, it's all gone, apart from the little module that could. I think actually it just disappeared and a puff of smoke just there. So now it's just the command pod. Temperature gauge got a bit high, but look at that, we've not even used half of our ablator yet, and we're now basically down to safe speeds. So yeah, nice and easy re-entry. Looks like we're going to be splashing down in the crater lake as well. And look at that beautiful re-entry effect. That is courtesy of the Firefly mod. Looks absolutely beautiful. Again, just as beautiful as the hover pens by Novium. I really, really am happy to have been sponsored by them again. I do genuinely really like my hover pens, and that wasn't a bit like I just did for the advert. They do sit on my desk permanently, so yeah, it makes a great gift for yourself, or a fan of tech, or anyone that can appreciate great product design like this. Then once again, you can get 10% off all hover pens using my exclusive code MATTLAN with free international shipping to most countries. Hit the link in the description or that pinned comment down below. And look at that, we have now splashed down in the crater lake. Can't really see a great deal though. Let's just time warp into the daytime. Lovely stuff. And yeah, gosh, doesn't modded KSP look so good these days? Granted, not a great deal of Parallax Continued stuff to see here. This is all mostly scatterer and volumetric clouds, but yeah, regardless, looks absolutely wonderful. Just as wonderful as the names, of course, on the right-hand side of the screen. My Patreon and YouTube supporters who make all of this content possible. Thank you so much, sincerely, for your support if your name is there. And of course, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.